Well, good evening, everyone. How you doing? Let's see here. I think I got this set up right. I tell you, I'm having all kinds of technical problems tonight, so we'll see if this actually goes or not. Hopefully, you're seeing the stream. Looks like I'm getting some errors for some reason. I have no idea, and so I had to stop and start it. But anyway, I hope you're with me tonight. And I appreciate you spending some time with me and asking your questions. Hopefully, we'll be able to get to them all. Again, my name is Lee Love, and this is the Photo Mentor Question and Answer. We do this every Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, which I believe is 6 p.m. Pacific time. Or if you're in the UK or somewhere, I believe that's actually 0100 UTC. So anyway, I kind of go over, we do this every Friday night, as I said before. I like to explain why we do this. I started this actually out of frustration because there were just too many questions I saw people ask in groups and forums, and I didn't feel they were getting the answers they needed. They were either getting a link to YouTube or something and not really a fully fleshed out answer. So I try to do the best I can here to answer your questions in depth, but I'm also available independently if you want. Again, you should be able to, if this is working properly tonight. If not, the replay will be on if you're not watching live. We're on YouTube. You can go to youtube.photomentor.tv or you can go to facebook.photomentor.tv. And both of those should take you to the page and you should see the live stream there, hopefully. Let's see, what else? So anyway, the way this show is structured is if you want to leave a question, you go through and you can post it in the comments of the live stream on either Facebook or YouTube. I ask you to please put a Q, a capital Q, in front of the question with a colon, and that way then my software will pick it up and it'll show up here for me and I can make sure I see your question. Let's see, what else? I think that's about it for tonight as far as housekeeping is concerned. Oh, by the way, you can also, if you want to ask a question, maybe you don't want to ask it live, or maybe it's more in depth, or you want to send some pictures or something, you can also send any questions or comments or anything like that to help at photomentor.tv if you want, and I'll answer the question directly if necessary, or I'll use it for next week's show. So anyway, that's the deal on that. Let's see what we got here. So tonight we have some questions that came in earlier, and let's see if I can make sure I've got the questions correctly here. We'll start with the first one, and the first one is I kind of edited it a little bit, if you don't mind, because I wanted to make sure that I didn't embarrass anybody. Let me see here. This should be this one right here. Okay. So this first question is from somebody that wanted to know about pricing. And they were working on a situation where they were asked to do photo pricing for a kindergarten class. And they weren't sure how to approach it. And so one of the questions was, or one of the requests, I should say replies, was, oh, just, charge for prints or put prints out there and accept money for prints. I disagreed with that, and I wanted to tell you why. And the reason I took this as the first question for this evening is pricing is a very difficult situation. There's a number of ways to do it. There's no right way to do it. It depends on your client, depends on your situation, depends on your market. But it is important that you understand that you are in business, and that you are, if you're not in business, then you're considered a 501c, and then you are a charity. And I tried that already, but my mortgage company doesn't really accept that. So the issue is, how do you set up charging on it? So what I recommend on a situation like this is you have to figure out your time. How much time is it going to take you to pack up, get there, do the shoot, tear down, and come home? And the person told me about 4 hours, which makes pretty good sense. So you really need to charge for your time. You need to charge for that kind of time, regardless if you sell any prints, because print sales, I mean, you may not sell any prints. Now, that has no reflection on your work, but the thing is, maybe people don't want prints, maybe they don't want images, maybe they don't want digital copies. So by offering that alone, you're really shortchanging yourself. So I recommended that they charge around $500 for the session. That's for their time, their equipment, their setup, and to do the shoot. And then, maybe offer one image each, because there's processing involved. I mean, you're the lab, right? And so there's time involved in that. And so then, and that would be above and beyond the print sales. Now, with the print sales, what I recommended was that they also maybe kick back 10% of the print sales, or 15, whatever you think is fair, back to the school. And that way there's an incentive for the school. You're kind of helping the school out. You're giving them some money back. They can use that for whatever they want to do to help the organization. But it also means that they have something invested, and they're going to help you promote the sales and the event. So that's the way I structured it. I since then have talked to a number of people. They thought that was a great idea, and that's the way I would have done it if it was for me. Now, here's the thing about pricing. You have to be willing to walk away. In other words, if you figure out your cost and you realize that this is what I have to charge, and I'm not going to make that much money anyway, I maybe make $200, whatever, out of this whole thing, and they aren't able to do that price, then you have two choices. One is you can say, I thank you very much. I wish I could do the project, but I just can't afford to. And one of the reasons is that if you take that job and you're not making any money, then another job could come along and you'll miss it because you're committed to a job you're not making any money on. So that's the difficulty there. The second thing is there's always going to be somebody more expensive, and there's always going to be somebody less expensive than you. So you just have to figure out what your pricing is and what you can live with, and kind of stick to it. And then the third thing, which I said there were two, but there's really three. The third issue is tier the pricing. In other words, do not change your pricing. If they say, oh, we can't do that, can you do, 400? No, you can't do 400 unless you change the scope of work. What I mean by that is, okay, if you're going to be there for 4 hours and it's going to be this price, then okay, I can be there for 2 hours and I can do it for 400 or whatever. Now, I'm not a big believer in charging per hour, because that's a whole nother issue we can spend hours on. But the point is that you never want to adjust the pricing if you don't adjust the scope of work. Because if you do, then the message the client gets is, well, where did they come up with 500 then? If they immediately change to 400, or they cut the price in half, then maybe the 250 price isn't valid either. Maybe they'll do it for less than that. So if you don't have some basis for your pricing and you don't adjust your scope of work based on the pricing, then you can run into a real problem. So that's the issue there. I didn't want to go into too much detail. I mean, this is, again, a very complicated subject, and one that we could spend all kinds of time, discussing a whole show on just pricing. And as I said before, there is no one real best way to do pricing. It's going to depend on your market. It's going to depend on your ability, your equipment, the situation. But that's a guideline based on this situation that I recommend, and something to consider. Okay, so let me see here. I apologize for a second. Let me see if this is actually okay. All right. So let's see what the next question is. Kind of an interesting one. It's kind of a different question, and it is based on this. Amanda asked about two cameras. She was looking at two cameras, and she wanted to know what the difference was about the two cameras, and you know, why she should look at one over the other. There was a pricing difference. I cropped it not because I didn't want to show the pricing, but I wanted you to be able to see the clarity of the picture. So here are the two pictures that she was asked, or the two cameras she was asking about. One was an Canon EOS 2000D, and the other was a Canon T7. Now, they're both T7s. Actually, the 2000D is apparently a European model, but the question here was, when she was asking about the differences, if you look at the one on the left is a gray market, meaning it's not a U.S. model. It comes in from Europe or someplace like that. And the one on the right is a U.S. model. So the one on the left is not going to have a U.S. warranty. So if there's a problem with the camera, even though it's a new camera and you have a receipt, you will not be able to get that repaired in the U.S. The one on the right, of course, does. There was a little bit of difference in price, and you'll find somewhat of a price. It's not a big difference. The other thing is the accessories and things like that are pretty much the same. Maybe some of the accessories were from Europe, some of them were from the U.S. But here's my comment on that, and what the point I want to make is that I'm not a big fan, and I don't recommend that you buy these kind of packages. And the reason the reason is, if you look at the stuff that comes with it, it's like, oh, this is great, I'm getting all this stuff for free. Well, this tripod is probably, I don't know, $29 tripod, if even that. The filters that come with it are not very good quality, I'm sure, and they'll actually deteriorate or destroy the quality of the lens that you put in front of it. And these other items that you see here that are screw-on items above the memory cards, those are adapters that will allow you to give close-up or telephoto, and they're just, you don't want to put anything in front of the lens at all. It's really going to destroy the quality of the lens. And so I'm just not a big fan of it. And so in my experience, what happens is this stuff is just really not, it's stuff you're not going to keep. It won't hold up. You end up throwing away or not using it at all, and you're just better off not doing it. Now, I'm not saying that these items are this situation, but I have seen situations where the other reason that the price is so low is because they will swap out the manufacturer accessory. So instead of a Canon or Nikon charger, they'll put a third-party charger in there. Instead of a Nikon or Canon battery, they'll put a third-party battery in there. And that's how they're able to sell the unit for less money. I won't go into a lot of detail. This is a little bit of inside baseball stuff. But the way it works is that all these prices are the same. When you see a price from Best Buy or online or Amazon or your local dealer, the price will always be the same when there's a sale, because those prices are set by the manufacturer. If you see a price that's less money than what everybody else is advertising, that's a red flag. The first thing you want to look for is, are they an authorized dealer? Go to the Canon Nikon website, look up, there's a list there, you can see who's an authorized dealer. If they're not an authorized dealer, then you may be getting a new camera, but it may not have a valid warranty. So that's if it looks like it's too good to be true, that probably is. Don't buy a package with all this stuff in it. I'm telling you, it's a waste of time and a waste of money. And even though it may be the same price. And the other thing is that the price will always be within about $3 difference of each other. I think the manufacturers allows them to adjust that much. But when they run a sale, a manufacturer does, it's the best time to buy a camera. And so don't be fooled by these kinds of deals that look like they're fantastic, but really not, because it's just not really a good system, and you're kind of, you run the risk of buying junk, or run the risk of buying something that's not from a authorized dealer. Okay. All right, let's see what else we got here today. Let's see if this is okay. So the next question comes from Craig. And Craig was looking at, I think I have a picture of this here. Let me see. I thought I did. I might not. Craig was looking at a lens, a Sigma lens, and the Sigma lenses are really fantastic lenses, and I highly recommend them. So if you are looking for a lens, I don't think I have a picture of that lens. The lens is an 18 to 30, 18 to 35 f1.8, which is rare for a zoom lens to have any kind of really decent aperture, but especially a 1.8. This lens is very popular, and it's especially popular in the video world, because what will happen is people will put it on a video camera and they'll put an adapter. They'll use a Metabones or a Vitrox or somebody's adapter, and that gives them a really good focal length. It's a fast lens. It's good for video, that type of thing. So it's a very popular lens. So his question is, he's asking really about the crop factor issue. So it's an 18 to 35. It says it's a crop sensor lens. Will it work on a 7200? Yes. And the question is, what will the focal length be? It will effectively be about a 27, I think, to about a 52 millimeter lens. That would be, and it's a whole nother discussion, but you're not getting any more magnification. What you're really getting is less field of view. But the point is, yes, it will work. It will work great. It's a terrific lens, and I highly recommend it. So if there's something you're thinking about, then I would recommend that lens. It's a great, all-around lens. Okay. Let's see what else we've got here. Let's see. Apologize for the problems with the live stream tonight. Hopefully you guys are still getting this. If not, you can watch it on the replay. Okay. One of the things I like to do is to highlight some interesting work that I see from new photographers. And one of the pictures I want to show you tonight is this one right here. This is from Lacey, and Lacey shot this picture with a Canon T7. Not a complicated camera, kind of an entry-level camera, 18 to 55 millimeter, which is considered what we call the kit lens. But I just thought it was a really nice image of a storm. She did a bunch of pictures like this, a little bit of post-processing on it, but I thought it was terrific. And I think it's more, the thing I like about, there's a couple things I like about this image. Obviously, the dramatic scene of the sky and the storm is impressive. Also, the fact that she got down low, or relatively low, and you've got some stuff in the foreground. Putting stuff in the foreground gives you perspective and gives you depth to the picture. And so without that, you almost couldn't tell how big this storm is. But by putting but getting down low and using that as a foreground, it really helped frame the picture. Also, the other nice thing about it that she did is she did a rule of thirds, where she's got the bottom half of the frame 1/3 up. So in other words, the sky is the most important part, which is why it's the 2/3 of the image. If she would have put this in the center of the frame, the horizon line at the center of the frame, it wouldn't have been nearly as impressive image. So hats off to Lacey on that one. Did a really nice job, and good job on that one. So anyway, the next one I have is, this is one of my favorite, by the way, and this was done by Claudia, and Claudia is in Romania. I think I apologize, Claudia, if you're watching this. Is it Bishur? I don't know how to pronounce it. I apologize. I know how to pronounce Claudia, though. Claudia I've been watching her work for a while now. She uses, the interesting thing is it's not a fancy camera. She's using a Nikon D50-100, which is a couple of years old. This was shot at ISO, or at ASA shutter speed of 400th of a second at ISO 250. And I've been watching her work. She does she kind of likes macro work. And the interesting thing about her work is she's very creative. She knows how to use light, and she has a great sense of composition. So some of her other pictures that I've seen, and maybe I showed them on one of the other shows, was shot with just, I think it was 55 to 300 or something. It was just a kit lens that came with the camera. Again, nothing fancy, but I show this to reinforce the point. It's not about the equipment. It's not about the gear. You can do this with any kind of camera. You could almost do this with an iPhone if you wanted. But the point is, even an older camera doesn't have to have super mega. I think this camera, she told me, was 16 megapixels. It doesn't even have to have super megapixels. It doesn't have to have super ISO. It just, you have to be creative. You have to use your own creativity to solve these problems, and that's where the value comes in. That's what really makes a difference. And the other thing she did with this picture is she used this interesting lens. I was talking to her about this, and the lens is, I'm not even going to pronounce it. I believe it's a Russian lens. I looked it up, and it's what gives it this kind of interesting bokeh, the circles in the background. It's not an expensive lens. It's about, I think, $130 on eBay or something. But it's an older completely manual lens. And so once again, she's not spending $2,000 on a lens, not even autofocus. But yet, if you look at the image, the quality of the picture, the uniqueness of it is fantastic. And I think one of the things that makes it work is not just but the fact that she has a blue background with an orange foreground. Those are colors that are opposite on the complementary color scale. And so I think that really works. And of course, the framing started from the lower left, going up to the upper right, your eyes drawn to that. Anyway, I think it's just a terrific picture. And hats off to Claudia for that. And I encourage her to keep at it because she's doing some great work. She just recently bought a Sigma 105, I think it is, and she's using that for macro work, and that's incredibly sharp. But she was telling me she had this other lens. I said, give it a try and see what you think. Okay, let's see what else we got here. So I have another question that came in, and the other question is, has anyone gone to school or is going to school for photography? And so this is from Alyssa. I guess it's Alyssa. Photography school is an interesting thing because there's certainly a role for it, and I'm not discouraging anything from going to photography school, but it gives you a basis and a good foundation. It depends on how you learn and the style that you like to learn at. Some people can need a more structured environment where they need kind of a more rigid environment to be, where they have lessons and they have assignments and that type of thing. And some people can learn more quickly by just doing. No matter what you do, though, whether you go to school or take a course, a class, whatever, photography is always about learning. You'll always be learning, and that's one of the things I love about it, because you never stop. There's always something to learn. There's always something new. There's different genres of photography that you can go into. Maybe you start off doing photojournalism and you find out you really like advertising, or you like sports or something like that, documentary kind of style. And so there's a whole nother learning curve as far as that's concerned. So going to school is great, but there's also an awful lot you can learn just by shooting. And that's the best way, is to shoot. I always used to tell people, shoot. And that's every day you want to be out shooting, because it can be a lost skill. If you're not shooting all the time, you lose that creativity. There's a whole bunch I could talk about, personal projects and that kind of stuff, but we'll leave that for another time. But, photography school is great, but there's also a lot of other opportunities there if you're not in photography school. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So let's see what else we got. Another. I want to show you another picture. Now, this picture, unfortunately, I don't have much information on. I reached out to Gary and I couldn't get the information in time for the show, but I still think it was worth showing to you. And this is from Gary Moore. I believe Gary's in the UK. And this is a picture. he says is rain, and obviously. I don't know how much, if it's a slow shutter speed. I don't. That's what I wanted to find out. If it was really rain, if he added it in post processing. Um, but I think it's just a beautiful image. It's very artful. It's the composition is good, and of course the colors are great. The complementary colors and the processing is fantastic on it. So I think it was something. Just wanted to applaud Gary for this image, and again, I doubt it was really a lot of technology there. I don't. The camera may have been pretty basic, but he has an eye, obviously, and it shows in that work. So again, it's not about the equipment. You don't need a lot of equipment. If you have it, great, but it's more about your imagination and what you can come up with. So that's my spiel on that. All right, let's see what else we got here. So let me look here. Sorry, refresh my page, and also see if I have any. Hopefully the YouTube. I was having some trouble with YouTube tonight as well, getting that working. But so I don't see any questions on that yet right now. Okay. Or do I? Nope. Okay. All right. Apologize for the distraction. All right. So the other question comes from Rachel. And Rachel asked about a card. She had some images here of a card, and she wanted to know if this was a decent card that she could use. So there's a couple of things to look for on these cards, and I'll see if I can. Let's see here if I can zoom in on this a little bit. Whoops. Here we go. All right, so the thing to look for in a card like this is it is a decent card. It's a the right here in the center it says SD, and then I don't know if you can read this under it says XC. So that's the better. It's a slightly newer card. I do like SanDisk. I use SanDisk cards on pretty much everything I shoot. And the two things that are interesting to look at are the speed and the capacity. So if you look in the front there, it says 170 megabits per second. Now, you probably can't see that, but there's a little asterisk above it, I believe, as well. And my guess is that refers to read speed, not write speed. So 170 megabits per second is good. So when you're downloading the images to your computer, then it'll read pretty well. It's probably about a 95 megabyte per second write speed, which is still pretty good. And of course, it's a 64 gigabyte card. So it's quite a capacity on there. The trick is, now there's the other kind of card that you'll see is a UHS 2 card. And the UHS 2 card, I don't have a picture of that. The UHS 2 card has additional pins on the card. I don't think this is one of them. You know, I just thought, no, it isn't. I was going to see if I maybe have one handy because I knew I had a card here. So a regular UHS 1 card just has one row of pins, but a UHS 2 card has 2 rows of pins. So it's it's faster. But the difference is that your camera has to take advantage of that. So you can't just buy a UHS 2 card. I've heard that there will be some improvement, but it's not going to it won't take advantage of that extra pins on there because the camera doesn't have. So if your camera does support UHS 2 cards, they're much faster. Now, do you need that? Well, it depends on what you're shooting. If you're shooting sports, then it will write to the card faster, which means you'll get a higher frame rate per second generally. If you're doing video, that's a reason to have a UHS 2 card. They can be much more expensive, though. That's the problem. So you just have to decide on how fast of a card you need and whether your camera will support it, and then the capacity. Again, a lot of people that are shooting video will maybe look for that capability. A lot of the newer cameras all are UHS 2, especially the higher end models. But again, if you're going to buy a Nikon D3500 or a Canon T7, talking probably $400, maybe $450, depending on the sale that's going on. You can spend $200 on a UHS 2 card. So at least, close to that. So I'm not sure it makes sense. And so I don't think it supports a UHS 2 card. And the reason is, my point is, why would it? Because who's going to put a $200 card in a $400 camera? It just doesn't make good marketing sense. So anyway, that is the deal on that. Let's see here. I've got any. Okay. I think that's all the questions we have tonight. So it's kind of a quick show. Of course, with the technical difficulties and the stream, we might have missed some people tonight. I apologize if we did, if you weren't able to watch. But we'll watch. This will be a replay as well. I'd like to kind of finish up tonight by talking about, again, kind of something that I rag on a lot, and I apologize for it, but it's true, and that is, as photographers, I see this as there are three kind of photographers, and I probably mentioned this before. There is the technical photographer. A lot of people get into photography because they love the technology, the gizmos, the accessories, all of it that's involved in actually making a camera work and understanding the aperture and the shutter speed and the ISO and how they interact and that kind of stuff. Then are the artists, photographers. Now, these are typically people that get involved in photography and don't really know much about they're not very technically savvy. Doesn't mean they can't figure it out, but they're really more of the pure artist types. My joke is they don't really know a bus stop from an f-stop, and that's fine, because the work they create is fantastic. I mean, they really have a vision, they really have an eye, and I think their work is much more impressive. And then the third type of photographer is one that kind of has a leg in either category. They have some technical expertise, but then they also have an artistic side. Maybe that's you. The difficulty is how to balance that, because the technology can easily overwhelm and take over, and you end up spending time and energy into buying stuff, acquiring equipment, and doing the technology aspect, but not taking pictures, not making pictures. So and one of the mistakes or things that really bothers me is I see a lot of photographers on forums and groups that are really into that part. They can recite the speeds and the feeds and the ISOs and all the specs on all these cameras. And a new photographer comes on there and asks a question about a photographer, and they'll jump in and they'll say, you need a full frame camera, and you got to have this and you got to have that. And the problem is that's not looking at where the new photographer is. In other words, it's not about technology. It's about creating art, creating images that impact your viewer. And that has nothing to do with the camera. A lot of people as photographers will look at, what's the ISO? It's kind of noisy. Our clients and people that buy or use our photos for whatever reason don't care about that. They care about, does the photo have an impact? Is it emotionally drawn? Is it say something to them? Is it speak to them? Is there emotion there? They don't know all this other stuff, and they don't care about this stuff. So I guess to summarize, what I'm trying to say is try not to get hung up on the technology of photography. That's the job of manufacturers. It's their job to promote these new specs and things like that. And it's our job as photographers to make images, and make images that are compelling and that tell a story. And the technology has nothing to do with that. So anyway, that's just a little bit of my rant soapbox for tonight. Is that I would, try and focus more on that. I don't care. There's a lot of this goes hand in hand with, I see a lot of advice people say, new photographers specifically. They're telling new photographers, oh, you have to shoot on manual. Well, that's baloney. You don't need to shoot on manual. You need to shoot on auto to start with. The point is, you want to work with your client. You want to work with your subject. You want to create an image. It doesn't matter what the settings are right now. I don't care if you use an iPhone to learn to see, learn composition, learn lighting, learn storytelling. Then you can go off of auto and get more creative. But going on manual is kind of like telling somebody, oh, you want to drive a car? You got to learn on a stick shift before you can drive. Well, that doesn't make sense. I mean, it has nothing to do with the rules of the road or understanding how how to drive and operate and the rule and that type of thing. That has to do with the mechanics of the car. So why turn, a $300, $400, $2,000 camera into a 1960s manual film camera by putting it on manual? Let the camera do some of the work for you. And so if you're going to go off of auto and you've got that, the first step is to go to aperture priority. And we'll spend some time on that later on in another episode, talking about how that works and where you need to be and how to shoot on aperture and why you would shoot on aperture priority. So anyway, couple things. Again, we do this every Friday night, 9 p.m. If you have questions that you didn't get answered or you didn't send in tonight, you can always send them in to email help@photomentor.tv. Be sure and go to our Facebook page at facebook.photomentor.tv or our YouTube channel at youtube.facebook.tv. And again, I just would encourage you to think more about your work and your art as opposed to less about the technology. So anyway, that's my rant for tonight, and I appreciate everybody spending some time with me tonight. We'll do this again next week. Again, I'm available during the week as well most of the time. So if you have some questions or something that you want to ask, be sure and do that. And again, we'll see you again next week.